In the booktube reading system, out of the ordinary books are considered especially cool. In the state of Washington, the dedicated booktuber who reviews these books is the host of an elite channel called Around the Weird. This is his story.
Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host, who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found while watching the many productions of Dick Wolf. Today, it is Short Story Tuesday, a wonderful day out of the week where I can talk about all the short form literature that I found that just says, this is unusual, you have to talk about it, Mr. Nothing. And today is no exception because I have found something quite unusual, quite different in my travels. The story I want to talk about today features demons, unruly interns, and two confused detectives in a famous TV show. I am going to be talking about, mainly I'll be talking about Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado, I believe that's pronounced. I didn't look it up before, but I'm hoping that's right. So I'm going to be talking about a specific story called Especially Heinous that focuses on, of all things, the Law and Order SVU TV show, which I wasn't expecting. This is a very good short story collection. There's only like 6 stories, and they're fairly long for their for their length and whatnot. Much more so than the other short story collections that I found. This has kind of a vibe that is similar to The Wrong Heaven by Amy Bonifants, which I talked about, I think, 2 weeks ago. There's a short story in here called 8 Bites, which is very similar to the story that I talked about, Little Sister, in that there's a character who has a trauma, and as a result of the trauma, she's haunted by a physical manifestation of that trauma in a sort of spooky kind of way. In Little Sister, it was the physical manifestation of the little sister that she lost. But in 8 Bites, it's a physical manifestation of her guilt, or the complicated relationship between her daughter and the narrator in the story. And I'm pretty much guessing about that, but it's a very interesting short story, and one of the good ones in this collection right here. For those that don't know, Carmen Maria Machado, she is a queer author. It says so on the back here, so I'm not just guessing that. She's won a number of awards for her literature. And her a lot of her short stories have appeared in other formats, whether it be journals or magazines and whatnot. So she's fairly well published, despite being an author who found her footing in what appears to be the past 10 years. She's slowly become more prolific and getting her name out there and doing quite a bit of work. I don't know much else about Carmen beyond this book and just what I found in the research, but I do hope to read more of her work because this is pretty good, and it's a different kind of good, funny and yet haunting at the same time. I can't wait to see what else that she has to offer there. Especially Heinous focuses on an unnamed narrator. They don't really talk about themselves. They only talk about the episodes. So they're recounting 272 different views of Law and Order, I believe, over the course of 7 to 12 seasons. basically describing the various episodes that they have watched. Although it quickly becomes apparent they're not talking about any real episodes. They're actually talking about fictional episodes that they made up and have no basis in what's going on with the actual Law and Order SVU. So it's a different reality, or maybe it's a person who's experiencing a different reality than what's actually on TV. And the episodes range from procedurals. The two detectives, Olivia Benson and Detective Stabler, are investigating rapes and murders of sex workers and various sex crimes throughout New York City, and sometimes Florida for some reason. You have the procedurals, and then it just goes on to devolves into chaotic, almost immediately into chaotic ramblings, where some of the stories revolve around the interns trying to poison or roofie Stabler and Vincent so they can play tricks on them and convince them that they're in love. Some of the stories focus on the interns summoning demons, of all things. Some of them focus on the DA falling in love with Benson for some reason. Some of them focus on rapists with weird lives. They're brief summaries, but they provide like a very interesting insight into how this person views SVU, or how this person how SVU exists in this parallel reality. Again, like sometimes the interns are summoning demons, and other times you have stories involving Father Jones, who doesn't actually exist in the SVU that I know of, and who is hearing voices and seeing prophecies and is trying to deal with the voices that are in his head, much to the chagrin of Stabler, who views him as like a sex criminal, but he might actually be a sex criminal. Underlying these stories is a tale of romance that's developing between Stabler and Benson. However, Stabler doesn't want to leave his wife because they have a pretty solid relationship, and Benson. I guess Benson is a little reluctant because maybe she doesn't trust Stabler all the way, possibly because he's cheating on his wife. And while that goes on, there's these parallel versions of them called Abler and Henson, which is funny to me for some reason. And they are a more successful version of Stabler and Benson, who are able to solve crimes without issue and are able to deal with the various ghosts and demons that are popping up throughout New York City for some reason. Are able to form a successful relationship without issue. And Stabler and Benson see these parallel clone doppelganger versions of themselves. And Benson sees Abler and Henson on a train and is just freaked out by that. And Stabler sees Abler in the mirror and turns around to try to punch him, reacting very violently to that. And he's just like, no thanks, I don't... it disappears, and so he's just confused about what's going on. So no thanks there, something like that. There's no real through line connecting all these plots, but you can see something forming. It appears at the very end that the DA and Benson are able to find a successful relationship going on, and Stabler makes up with his wife by reflecting on how beautiful things are with their little girls, their children that they've had. So something forming there. It's a bit disconnected. So there's no real plot line, but there is something there that I think Machado is trying to get at, and is worth thinking about. Some good examples that I feel like I have to read these examples to you because it's the only way to properly lay out what's going on in this. So the first one comes from season 1, episode Payback. Stabler and Benson investigate the castration and murder of a New York City cab driver. They discover that the victim had assumed the identity of another man years before because he was wanted by the police. In the end, Stabler discovers that the stolen identity of the man in question was also stolen, and he and Vincent have to begin the investigation all over again. That night, as he tries unsuccessfully to sleep, Stabler hears a strange noise. A deep drumming, 2 beats. It sounds like it's coming from his basement. When he investigates the basement, it sounds like it's coming from outside. You have episode Payback, and it's already forming like a weird, unusual thing. Why does the episode synopsis go so far as to describe what he's hearing in his basement, and like why can't he find that drumming sound? And it's already, like, it follows like a normal SVU procedural before just going completely off the rails. Another good example is Tortured, page 83 in another season. Tortured. You are not the only one we trust, the girls with bells for eyes say to Benson. Not that other one. Benson assumes they mean Stabler. So inventing like a ghost called the girl with the bells for eyes, who kind of haunts Stabler throughout or Benson throughout the summary that's going on here. And they think that Benson thinks that the ghost means like Stabler, but it's probably the other Benson, Henson, that they're referring to there. And then another example, Head, is the episode title. Okay, so here's my theory, Stabler says to Benson when she gets back into the car with the coffee. Human organs. They are wet and thick and fit together like pieces of a puzzle. It's almost like someone zipped open every body before birth and slopped them in there like oatmeal. Except that's not possible. Benson looks at Stabler and squeezes her cup so hard a little fart of scalding coffee runs down her hand. She looks behind her. She looks back at him. It's almost like he says thoughtfully, they were grown on the inside and are meant to be shaped together. Benson blinks. It's almost like she says, we grow in the womb and keep growing. Stabler looks excited. Exactly, he says. And then we die. So, like, that's very strange. It's less of an episode synopsis and more of a weird conversation that might take place in the episode. But why are they talking about organs in that episode? It's very, very strange and kind of unsettling in a lot of ways, because this is a very exact conversation, and it boggles the mind in a lot of ways. The synopsises just keep going until season 12. With Benson and the DA getting together, and then Stabler and his wife sort of staying together despite the earlier kind of relationship troubles they had in previous seasons. So again, something connecting, even though it's not 100% connecting there. And in terms of analysis, again, this is very bizarre. It's often Lovecraftian at times, because there's much more like with how Lovecraft, like you see the characters who see these bizarre monsters that they're not meant to see go crazy, Benson and Stabler kind of go crazy when they see the through line, like when they realize that they're a part of a television show or a part of a weird reality, like it causes them to become filled with dread and despair in a very Lovecraftian kind of way. Especially when Stabler and Benson see their parallel reality selves, Abler and Henson. Like this is how things maybe were meant to be, and not how things are. And the characters kind of react terribly at times to that. Another thing that I got when I was reading this are like the idea of schizophrenia, how the person writing this might have schizophrenia, and so they're not exactly seeing the episodes completely as they are, or the person who's writing this is describing characters who themselves have schizophrenia, and that is why like it's so different from the version that we have of SVU, where like Benson and Stabler like are hearing voices and are seeing a reality of New York that doesn't actually exist. That I might be going too far with that analysis there, but like it's bizarre to the point that that's what I was thinking as I was reading it, and I just felt like I had to share that with you. And I do have to wonder if this is some sort of bizarre, like elaborate commentary on Law and Order itself on the part of Carmen here. Maybe it's like a statement on how ridiculous the show has become over the course of several seasons. Whereas in season 1, it was a standard police procedural where they talked about sex crimes, and by season 12, they're on to like a bunch of different like cults and like demons and stuff like that. Like the actual show isn't like that, but it has gotten to the point where it's maybe not about what it originally started about. And there's more episodes devoted to weird tangents than there are devoted to talking about sex crimes and women in sex work fields. Given that she is viewing a lot of these stories in a feminist lens, I'd say that's probably accurate, because maybe she wants to call attention to how people in sex work are typically treated unfairly or something like that. I mean, at the same time, this could also be a commentary about how the show has to be nonsensical at times in order to get over the other horrors that it's displaying. Like, it has to invent demons and ghosts and parallel realities in order to, stuff down the fact that they're talking about rape and people being murdered for sexual related reasons, because some of the times you'll find the standard police procedurals described in this story, where like a Dominican woman gets kidnapped, and that's all that it says, and that's pretty horrifying on its own. But then you have sandwiched between that like two descriptions of like Benson and Stabler going off on like nonsensical Lovecraftian rants, and it's funny, but it also distracts from the horror of like someone being taken away or being murdered during some very sex crime. So maybe she's commenting on that, like how TV shows aren't maybe the most appropriate forum for discussing sex work and whatnot. If you have a better explanation there, please let me know, because I'm willing to view that lens and try to better work out that explanation right there. Another thing that maybe I don't like about this is how it just goes on forever. Like, it describes 12 seasons of episodes, and it does, because it's so disjointed. It just feels like it's going nowhere at times, and I feel like maybe Carmen could have done a better job with fewer episodes. Although maybe she's trying to tell an overarching story that I just don't get. That could be a problem on my end. So. I do feel like the length of the story itself kind of hinders it in some fashion, but it's still funny to read the various episodes that are going on at times, as well as seeing like what else she's trying to do there. Anyway, I would say that I very much enjoyed this book, Her Body and Other Stories. It was fun. It was interesting. Like it's fun to compare it against The Wrong Heaven by Amy Bonifants. And also just see how it's drastically different. And I definitely wasn't expecting, especially Heinous, to come by. And it's got to be one of the most bizarre short stories that I've ever read on this channel. And the format of it is definitely unique in that I don't think I've come across anything like that before. I would say I recommend this if you can find it. If you want to read specific short stories from her, she is very well published in many literary journals. So if you have a subscription to those journals, you can probably find them online, and that's always worth a shot at discovering her work. Otherwise, if you want to leave a comment below, do so. Let's have a discussion about Carmen's work, especially because I think it's pretty interesting. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people may find out about Short Story Tuesday and this very interesting story that I have not heard anyone talk about before. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and detective-y travels. Farewell.